London, late summer 1666. A city built of timber and trade. Tight lanes, leaning roofs, windows stuffed with linens, cheap tallow burning through the night. An east wind combs the alleys named for what they smell like: fish, bread, milk. On Pudding Lane, a spark wakes in a sleeping oven. It's polite at first. Fire has good manners, until it doesn't. Elsewhere, a man counts names like coins. Tobias Venn, thief-taker. He drags felons for reward and invents his own encouragements when court is slow. He owns 2 ledgers because one book can carry a man's whole appetite: the thin, public ledger of petty thieves, and the fat, private ledger bound to look like a psalter. Its left column holds the poor. Its right, the gentry. Between them, Tobias stands safe. He hides that fat ledger where no officer thinks to look. A bookbinder's shop in St. Paul's churchyard, shelves of sermons and grammars rising like small cities around the great cathedral. In that same shop, Eliza Dacre tightens twine around stitched quires. 17, ink on her fingers, cipher in her bones. Her father, once a printer, sits in Wood Street calmed her, shrunk by a debt that won't stand still. The man moving the sum? Tobias Venn. When Tobias brought his private psalter months ago to be sewn into a dull brown wrapper, Eliza saw more than leather and thread. She noticed the catchwords on each leaf, the ornamental flowers in the margins, ivy leaves, inverted hearts, placed too carefully to be accidents. A second language hiding in the first, names whispered in sigils, secrets bound to a prayer book. She stitched his spine and read his sins. Tonight, the sky over the churchyard glows a not-quite dawn orange. Bells stumble, then find a rhythm. The cry runs the river. Anchors, fire, water. Printers and stationers haul their finest sheets into the stone belly of St. Paul's, into the crypt against fear, with the certainty that stone is safety. Eliza helps carry bundles, then opens the drawer beneath the counter. Tobias's false psalter waits between a Polish grammar and a book of ballads. She lifts it. Leather dull, paper ordinary, ink unremarkable. The damage it has done to her father, remarkable. She wraps it in linen, tucks it under her cloak, and steps into the tide of bodies moving toward the cathedral. Tobias arrives to check his power like a man palming a watch. The drawer is wrong. His mouth goes dry. In the ledger's place, a decoy psalter. He knows the feel of his own sin. This isn't it. Across the shop, he clocks Eliza, a bundle at her waist, ink on her throat like a tiny tattoo, a stare like a sharp quill. She doesn't run. She steps into the crowd. He follows, because he is brave, and because he must. "Miss Dacre," he says when the noise lets words pass. "You have something of mine." "I have something of everyone's," she answers, not breaking stride. "That's what you made of it." "What do you want?" Tobias asks. "Money? Your father's debt forgiven." "I want the ledger to cease to exist," she says simply. "I'll burn your past and bind the ash into a book that writes us both another life." He almost laughs. Almost. Inside St. Paul's, cool shadow and stone. Men stack bales of paper against pillars, paper cuddling stone the way ivy does. The roof, scaffold in timber and tar for repairs, waits above, patient and mortal. Eliza finds a charwoman's closet, a brazier, a pot of size, a door that will wedge. She lights a neat flame, opens the ledger, and sees what she expected: the poor listed where the law will hurt them, the powerful listed where the ledger will protect them. Magistrate Hobb appears again and again in the right column. Tobias' partner in the management of unfortunate realities. Outside the door, Tobias leans against the wood. "Eliza," he says, using her name the way a key uses wards. "If you burn it, we become ghosts. Ghosts command nothing. Ghosts don't free your father. Ghosts don't hang either," she answers. He is silent. Then, Magistrate Hobb is coming. He won't coax. He'll burn it, and you with it. "Then stand between us," she says. He takes a breath, drops his hat, and steps in. Hobb arrives with men and a gentleman's contempt. He pushes, Tobias pushes back. The pistol at Hobb's belt flashes, drops, spits a spark that dies under Eliza's quick heel and a wet rag. Hobb smiles thinly. "We will all leave with the book," he says. "Grammar is simple. The book belongs to whoever pays its consequences." "You bound yourself to him," Eliza tells Tobias. "Not by ink, by cowardice." "I bound myself by hunger," Tobias says. "Then by habit." He eyes the brazier. "I'm considering a new habit." Above them, the roof begins to hum, lead sheets softening into memory, remembering the river. Eliza lifts the ledger. Hobb lunges, and Tobias meets him, small but precise, the way a binder grips a stubborn spine. He flips the moment. The ledger lands at the brazier's edge. The difference between a book and a fire, Tobias says, is that a book remembers. He holds a page, Hobb's page, over the flame. No, Hobb says. Yes, Tobias answers. He touches a corner to the fire. The flame runs a clear line along the bottom edge, curling letters into bruise-colored ghosts. Eliza catches ash in a copper pan, treasure now, while Tobias blocks Hobb without theater, only intent. The leather cover, Eliza's handiwork, tightens and curls, letting out a smell like burnt glue and a bad meal. She swallows grief and gathers ash. St. Paul's exhales in rivers of molten lead. Men run. Papers lift and ignite in midair, little birds turning to light. The corridor outside becomes a red breath. Run, Tobias tells Eliza. South transept. Postern door. She glances at Hobb. He'll chew a smaller name if we go. He will, whether we go or stay, Tobias says. Choose whether he bites you on principle. They run. Hobb chases, and used to chasing. They cross the nave where the law itself flips open on the flagstones, begging to be read. Lead sings down the walls like quicksilver rain. The postern gives them a cough of cooler air. Outside, the churchyard is a theater in collapse. Stalls torch up. A chain of men passes buckets like beads. The cathedral gouts fire into its own yard. Tobias turns to Eliza. Your pan, he says. We need water, not to save the old, to make the new. The Thames is the city's oldest door. Tobias flags a waterman. Goff. Arms like rope, eyes like a fish that has seen hooks. To Blackfriars, Tobias says. Double, if my bundle rides inboard. Goff eyes the pan, shrugs at money, and they skim the river under a sky of cinders. Overhead, bridges crowd with onlookers. Onshore, gunpowder blasts houses into fire breaks. Ash falls like black snow. Eliza's pan rides like a reliquary on her lap. They land at a widow's bindery, brick, bruised, still standing. The widow opens her door, measures the three of them in a single glance, and nods them toward the back room. What have you dragged in, Venn? She asks, seeing the pan, smelling the fire, hearing the city's teeth. He only says, a chance. Eliza opens the pan. The ash is fine, gray, with a silky shine. The ledger's power, ground down to weightless dust. Tobias feels grief and relief together. This is nonsense, Hobb says from the doorway, red-faced and stubborn. Destroy the sum and the debt disappears? Your father won't be saved by an art project. No, Eliza says, measuring water into a stone bowl. He'll be saved by having his name in a book you can use to sell him twice. Tobias grinds rag with a pestle, learning the rhythm of penitent work. Eliza stirs in the ash, a pinch, a stir, a small ceremony, and the mixture turns ghost milk gray. She molds sheets from the vat, couched on felt, a gray like the Thames on a cloudy day. Not pure, but honest. They dry. They ink. They set a form for a small, sharp pamphlet. A brief register of losses, being the names of persons made poor twice. A list of names, each with a tiny flower. Read straight, it's a litany. Read sideways. The pattern spells HOBB for anyone taught by margins. A wink in print. A second language for those who can't afford the first. They pull proofs. The widow holds one to the light, runs a finger along a name. I knew this woman, she says softly. She can neither read nor sign. She'll be her own reference now. Tobias keeps Hobb in a chair, not with cruelty, but with cord and courtesy. The ground shifted, he tells him. Your business model has a wooden roof. I'm moving to brick. You've no idea, Hobb says, heat in his voice, how many men prefer wood, so long as it is polished. Then we'll sell brick that looks like wood, Tobias says. The trick, as you know, is the surface. By morning, sheets are dry enough to take ink. Tobias's hands blacken like a priest's on Ash Wednesday. Eliza sets type, locks the chase, and pulls the first run. The ink bleeds a little, true to its ingredients. They fold quires, stitch spines, stack pamphlets, and then they carry them under canvas to Moorfields, where London sleeps in new order, rich beside poor, not by coin, but by whoever found a dry patch first. Eliza climbs a barrel and discovers a voice she didn't know she had. "A penny for a paper with your name in it," she calls. "Or your neighbors, if you fear them forgotten. A penny for proof you exist." People stop. They listen. They buy. They read. They pass each other into print. Hobb, turned over to gentlemen who prefer their stains indoors, feels something uglier than danger, irrelevance. The fire will die. Stone will replace timber. Lanes will widen. Committees will write laws about brick and beam. But this gray, ugly little book, soft at the corners, ash in its fiber, circulates where writs cannot. In pockets, in aprons, under pillows, in the lining of hope. The third day, the wind lowers its voice. The fire turns sullen, then tired. People walk back to streets with names, but no houses. The air flakes black. Someone says Wren. Plans bloom too early and exactly on time. Eliza and Tobias stand and look where St. Paul's was. She wipes her cheeks with an ink-stained wrist. "If you look at ash under a lens," she says, "you can still read a leaf's veins." "I didn't know that," Tobias says. "He can be made new," she adds. "My father. He'll be out." Tobias nods, accepting the promise as a task. He will find the signature that opens the compter door and press his new name against it until it moves. Days later, her father steps into the widow's bindery with a cough and a caution, and the look of a man who has learned paper is never just paper. He hums with the widow, helps collate, and tells jokes he once hid in margins. Princess Truth and her drab nurse Rumor walked into a tavern. The endings change. Tobias laughs, surprised. He takes that as a measure of healing. They keep printing. They use the last ash to make ink for a single calf-bound copy, plain brown, no tooling. On the first page, Eliza writes, "Ash and ledger." Beneath, in a flourish only a printer would notice, "This book is made from what we chose to burn." They sign it, not as threats, but as a fact. Eliza Dacre, Tobias Venn, and where Hobb's name might enjoy its flourish, 3 tiny printers' flowers say, in the quiet language of ornaments, reserved for anyone who thinks law is something you buy like sugar. At dusk, in Moor fields, Eliza reads from the ash-bound book, not like a preacher, but like a printer who knows what words weigh. She reads names and small mercies. A baker who hid a neighbor's child in his oven. A waterman who charged no fare for beds. A woman ladling broth until her arm shook. The crowd breathes. The pages smell faintly of glue and something burned long ago. Not holy, honest. Tobias stands aside, unseen except as 2 ink-stained hands passing out pages. His ledger burned. He did not. He is becoming Rumor on purpose, and he finds that Rumor can be kind if you feed it the right story. Months on, a committee drafts laws about brick and timber and lane widths. A copy of a brief register of losses lies on a green baize table beside a beautiful map of the rebuilt city. The little book is ugly and soft at the corners. The men in wigs don tea know that its ink carries carbon from a ledger that once sold people's breath by the shilling. It doesn't matter if they know. That's the joke and the justice. One cold morning, Eliza hands Tobias the calf-bound ash and ledger. "Keep it," she says. "It's the only ledger we'll have between us." He turns it in his hands like a gift, not a trick. "When someone asks what I do," he says, "I'll show them this and say, I quit. And then I start it again." London redraws itself with clean lines. The cathedral's bones cradle new ambition. The river keeps the sky in its pocket and doesn't care. If you lay a sheet of paper over the scarred streets like parchment over a rubbing, you can trace how the fire shaped the city and how people chose what to save. A man once told Eliza, "Burning isn't beautiful." He was right in the small way, wrong in the big one. The burning smelled like glue and hair and loss. But pulp, mold, water, press, turning what hurt into something that helps. That is beautiful. Fire took. They chose what to save. A book died. A city didn't. A man afraid of becoming Rumor became one by choice. When the last ash paper pamphlet is gone, read, shared, used to wrap a child's keepsake, Eliza pins a single flake of ash in a cheap frame above her work table. People ask what it is. "A page from a book that no longer exists," she says, and smiles, and goes back to work. If you came into the bindery with cinders still in the gutters and copper in your pocket and asked what the fire meant, Eliza would sell you a small, ugly gray booklet for a penny. If you wanted to know what it felt like, Tobias would point you to the window and say, "Listen, outside, the city breathes, then builds." And under the hammer and chant and oaths and sales pitches, something quiet persists, the scratch of pens. Ash becoming ledger, ledger becoming ash, until what endures is not one man's list, but the chorus people make when they say each other's names on purpose. This has been the Forbidden Archives. If you have found this journey into forgotten story compelling, there are countless more mysteries waiting to be unearthed. Subscribe and return, because this archive is endless, and the deeper we go, the more secrets we uncover. Until then, keep searching.